Addiction to chaos, suffering, stress. What do all of these things have in common? They keep you in a state of like running in circles all the time. You are constantly feeding off of this vibration of like survival mode and fear and anxiety. And they're not good for us. And I'm in the business of building a long-term sustainable, not just successful, but fulfilling life. And that's what I do with my clients. There is no use in having success or all of the things you've ever desired if you are constantly riddled with chaos, suffering, and stress. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to get into where this came from, how to break out of this pattern, and how to merge into more of a state of peace, ease, flow. It's going to be really good. So let's talk about it. Where does this come from? Well, it can come from many places. Where does it come from? You know, if you've watched my other videos, I'm big in origin stories because it had to have come from somewhere, whether it was generational, whether it was something that you've experienced, whether it was traumatic, and nothing just kind of comes from thin air. And the awareness piece and the understanding piece helps and gives us direction as to how to shift it. So that's why it's important to understand the origin story. So there are many places this could have came from. Grew up in inconsistent environment. Okay, this can look like a lot of different things. So one day your caregiver was happy, one day they were not. One day everything was going good, and the next moment it's not. Or one moment you are feeling healthy and wealthy, or like your family member is healthy. I've seen this one show up a bit with clients. One day their family's all good, and then their family member ends up really sick. And that causes a lot of stress on a child's body, especially because they're out of control. They can't do anything about that, which to little child brain, that's really detrimental. But really what happens is like, it's going good. Something unexpected happens. Another thing, caregivers were inconsistent. So maybe they always had new hobbies. Maybe they would go to the gym for a little while and they wouldn't go to the gym, and their health was up and down. And with their career, they were always changing jobs. So that can show up in career, health, relationship, right? So if your parents got divorced and you saw one of your caregivers dating lots of different people and it was inconsistent, these things can all cause this addiction to chaos, even addiction to toxicity, and this just like addiction to the inconsistent patterns, because it's what we saw growing up. It is our comfort zone. And as we know, when we talk about your comfort zone, we've got to talk about your current capacity. This is stuff that sets your capacity. Okay. This is what sets your capacity. And what we are constantly trying to do is to break you out of your current comfort zone and expand to new capacities, right? So you can make space for peace, love, joy. Those are higher vibrating emotions. They vibrate at higher frequencies, so it means your capacity will need to expand for that. So you grew up in a consistent environment, grew up in stressful environment, okay? Now, this is tough because that means you probably grew up in like an unsafe environment, or one of your caregivers or both of your caregivers was always stressed out. If the house wasn't clean, they were stressing out and freaking out about the smallest, littlest things. Like the light was left on, and it's just like stressful and constantly like stressing about things and always worrying. So, this is the overbearing parent that calls you a million times, like worrying and tracking your location and making sure you're okay and everything's okay. Are you sick? Are you not? And like, and it just inflicts worry into the mind. And this isn't for you to sit here and be so mad at your caregivers, right? We're adults now, so we can't blame anybody else for what happened in our past. What we can do is start to really take inventory of where these patterns may have come from, practice forgiveness, which we'll get to, and let it go, and then merge into adult brain and start taking empowering action. So you grew up in a stressful environment, constant worry, constant fear being inflicted, right? And control. Maybe one or both of your caregivers liked to have a lot of control, was very controlling. And that's where all of this stuff that's like restricting, chaotic, it's stressful, it's just like, ooh, it's like really, it doesn't feel good, right? Okay. Grew up in suffering. Okay. So this is a tough one. I also want to say like a stressful environment or like an inconsistent environment. Like the home was always messy, right? The house was messy, and everything was like a mess, and nothing had order to it. Okay. I want you to recognize that part too. So you grew up in suffering, meaning you just had a tough upbringing. One or both of your caregivers was maybe abusive, or either that be emotionally or physically. You're just used to suffering, really. And if that's your normal state, if that's your current comfort zone and your capacity, your brain's always going to try to maintain that capacity, because stretching outside of it, like you don't know anything else, it's not safe. And so what we're trying to get you to do is to understand that it's safe to leave these comfort zones that have been created for you. And some of this can even be generational, right? Passed down from ages, but you can typically see the patterns show up in the last generation, so in your caregivers or in your grandparents. And when you start to understand that, you can start to practice forgiveness. You can start to see that it's nobody's fault. So now that we have a little bit more of an understanding, I want you to really reflect on it for yourself. Okay, like where is my chaotic tendencies, and this desire, like this need to like choose. Let's talk about how this shows up in your current life now. How this shows up now. Okay. How this shows up now could look like procrastination. It's a big one. Messy / unorganized corners of your life. Choosing toxic relationships, whether that be friendships. Okay. Okay. Procrastination, messy and unorganized corners of your life, choosing toxic friendships or relationships. It can also show up in like your diet and your career. Like you'll be so good. Like you high highs and low lows. I'm gonna write this before I forget. So high highs and low lows look more like you were good on your diet all week, and then on the weekend you just messed it all up, and you just like it goes into self-sabotage. But it looks like, oh, I didn't fight with my partner all week, but then you start a fight. I've been doing good on the gym all week, and then I fall off for 2-3 weeks, right? And that's because you're trying to leave your capacity and be consistent, but you keep sabotaging it to stay in your current comfort zone. Okay. So high highs and low lows, self-sabotage, choosing toxic relationships and friendships. And you may say, like, oh, no, they always find me. But only what finds you is what's inside of you. So if that addiction to chaos, suffering, and toxicity is inside of you, and even stress, because it's your current comfort zone subconsciously, we don't know this stuff, but subconsciously, and we don't typically know it, then yes, it finds us because that's the reality that we're living in. And if you haven't watched my other videos about like how your beliefs shape your reality, you should definitely watch that, because I talk about the logical steps it takes to actually create your personal reality through your beliefs, your mindset, your actions. And so, yeah, let's go through these. Procrastination, saving things for the last minute just to impose stress in your life. This is a subconscious action, and many people will even say, like, oh, it drives me, it's good for me. I don't believe that stress like that is good for anybody. You just don't need to live like that. If you want to live like that, then maybe this isn't the video for you. But what we're aiming towards is getting towards ease and flow and peace. We want to reach levels of peace because with those levels of peace, we get closer to God. We connect with God. We can hear our inner guidance. We know the steps to take. We know we are taken care of. Like, these are all, we have security. We feel abundant. We have all those feelings that humans naturally seek through trying to get them in the outside world. But really, like this, we're going to talk about the inner game, because this is an inner game, not an outer game. So you procrastinate, you save things for the last minute, you don't get ready until the last minute, and then you're in this rush mode and you're like, ooh, it's kind of like a high. And you don't even know it, and you're like, I hate it about myself, but really it's self-imposed, or maybe you like it, but it's self-imposed, and typically the mind does that because we're trying to impose or inflict some ways of stress and chaos and toxicity. So that's how that can show up. Messy and unorganized corners of your life. Okay, so you could have the cleanest home, but your car is an absolute mess. And that subconsciously gives you this like satisfaction. It gives you like this comfort. Um, Same thing with like maybe your closet looks like a bomb went off, but your home's nice and neat. And it gives you that little bit of that comfort. So you've got to ask yourself, like, what areas are unorganized in your life, because it's actually really easy to get organized. And that's just knowledge, right? You can read a book on that or something, but you've got to ask yourself why it is that you accept that in your life. It's probably because of how you grew up or things that you learned or this comfort zone that we're talking about, okay? Choosing toxic relationship, we already kind of went through that. In friendships, but you really just have to pay attention and take inventory. Like, what are my relationships like? Are they bringing me the higher vibrating emotions of like peace, joy, love, pleasure? Or are they bringing me the lower vibrating emotions of like fear, shame, guilt, anxiety, anger? And you're never going to live all the way in the high vibrating emotions, but you would like to tend towards that way. And that's a simple question to ask when you look at your relationships and friendships. High highs, low lows, self-sabotage, we went over. So these are different ways, and there are more ways. And if you are thinking of some, I would love to see it in the comments. Tell me about other ways that this could show up for you now. But these are just some simple ways that stress and chaos can be imposed in your life. And you really got to pay attention to the ways in which you do it at work too. And you're just like, constantly like coming up with new ideas instead of staying consistent. New ideas and creativity is great, but like you've got to ask yourself, how much are you constantly like shifting things in your business or moving things around, or how much are you starting fights in your relationship, or constantly changing your mind or changing your hobbies and not maintaining consistency and just allowing yourself to be like settled in a space. Because that what this addiction really is like constantly unsettled, all over the place, right? It's feeling like you're never really centered and grounded. And that's what we want. That's what we want to get to. Okay, at this point, you may be having a little bit of frustration and anger with how you grew up. So let's talk a little bit about forgiveness. Forgiveness for the past. If you're familiar with the pattern breaking method, then you know that the first step and the most important step is to heal. My water is over there. Okay. And healing the past. So we will hold and harness emotions and keep them trapped in our body until we feel them and release them. So what we will have to do is go back because we maybe didn't have the space or it wasn't safe to at the time, and we'll have to go and feel and release past experiences. I had a client who had a caregiver pass away and he had never fully grieved that experience. So we were doing one-on-one coaching together and he got the opportunity to just feel and release. And it took some time. But when he was able to release all of that grievance and all of that sadness, he was able to stop living in this place of chaos and survival mode because he had all these emotions that were trapped in his body, causing all this friction and all this regret and all this non-forgiveness for himself, but also for his caregiver that he never got to speak to about all of these things, right? So it's a big piece to the puzzle is to really feel and release that past experience and come to a healthy acceptance with it. Acceptance is one of the higher vibrating motions on the map of consciousness. I'll bring it up here so you can take a look at it. But if you've been watching my videos by now, you should be getting acquainted with the map of consciousness and kind of keeping this chart in the back of your mind whenever you're experiencing life, because it's a really great way to see and understand emotions, because emotions is something that we've kind of lost touch with along the way, but it is the language of the subconscious. It is what controls everything. It's what creates limiting beliefs. It's what creates our reality, what impacts our mindset, and what impacts the outcomes that we get in the daily life and the patterns that we live in. So you're going to have to feel and relieve past experiences. Another high vibrating emotion on the chart is reason. Understanding, it really helps. Understanding the reasoning and just having a logical understanding of why things happen the way that they did. Odds are this was generational. Whatever happened to you, whatever habits were imposed on you, whatever fears were inflicted on you, whatever mindsets were put on you, this was generational. So their parents did it to their parents, did it, their parents did that, and it's just like, it goes back ages. If you read the Bible, you'll see generational trauma throughout the entire Bible. If you read any book, you'll see generational trauma. Like, it's all passed down until the next generation can chip away at those patterns. And that's why we're sitting here learning this stuff, because you'll make it as far as you can to give your kids a better life or give the next generation a better life or to inspire those around you. And that's the point. That's why we feel so good when we get to inspire and help others or to create new life and pass our new knowledge along, is because we're making an impact in the greater good, in the greater purpose of the world. So I think it's going to be understanding generational trauma. Because that just doesn't give anybody a pass, and you should never just sit there and say like what you did was okay, because it wasn't okay, but I can still love you. I can either love you at a distance with my boundaries if that's necessary in the point that you're at. I can love you for who you are now. I can accept you, because some people are just not meant to heal in their lifetime. And it could just be, and again, like reading the Bible really helps with all of this, because as I read, like, some people's only purpose in this world was to have their kid so that that kid could go and do the things like God had for them. And sometimes it's easy to feel like that. Sometimes it's like, I know there's something meant for me. I maybe my parents weren't that great or didn't do the best job, but they had me and they did the best they knew how. given their generational trauma, given what was passed down to them, given the examples. And now we get to go ahead and do something with that. So it helps. It helps when it comes to the forgiveness. Last part's going to be let it go. And letting go is going to be through a few things: understanding and having that understanding of generational trauma, feeling and releasing the past experiences. But it isn't until we let it go and give it to God. It has nowhere else to go until we give it to God. Put it in the closet, it stays there, it just festers. We just kind of leave it there. We hope it goes away. You actually have to hand it over. And this is a hard part, because this is the moment when you're starting to leave your current comfort zone and your capacity. Because what you need to do is actually envision yourself handing it to him and him taking it away. And when you sit there in a prayer and a meditation and you actually give it away and you watch him take it away, it cracks you wide open. It cracks your current comfort zone and capacity. But you may run into a block. And I'll tell you this because personally it's happened to me many times. When I want to let something go, I say I want to let it go, but I don't really want to let it go, because this is all I've known my entire life. All I knew was suffering growing up. All I knew was chaos. All I knew was toxic relationships from what I've been shown. And in order for me to break out of all of that, I had to give that to God. And I had to say, I don't want this life anymore, because what does that mean? You're going to have to embrace the unknown. Because outside of here, this is all known. Your current capacity is all known. Outside of here, uncharted territory. We don't know what's out there for us. We don't know. And that's the main thing about this addiction to chaos and this your comfort zone is the high highs, the low lows, the inconsistency, the ups and the downs, and the stress and all of that suffering. That is your current comfort zone. And you will hold on to that for dear life as long as if you don't give that up. And it's such a tough one. I know that starting to embrace the unknown and embrace like newness of peace, newness of flow and ease. Like, can you believe that life could be easy? Watch. So you'll have to learn to embrace the unknown and trust in God. Trust that God's going to take care of you. Big part. Those are some of the steps that you're going to take for the forgiveness piece. Okay. And once you've forgiven, we can start to talk about merging into away from chaos, suffering, anger, frustration, shame, guilt, stress, anxiety, fear, constriction. Okay. These are all these places that you're stuck in. This is your current capacity. And now when moving over to ease, flow, peace. Oh, you know what? I'm going to put, it's hard. Ease, flow, peace, love, joy, pleasure. Okay. Some of you have never felt this in your entire life. Trust. I'm going to put control over here. Control. Some of you have never felt that in your entire life. If you grew up not being able to trust your caregivers to take care of you, or to be mature with how they raised you and all of that, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough because now you're in a place where you have to trust God. And life can be so easy if we just let go of this and let ourselves feel that. And it's going to be a journey, because if you just let this go in one day and you felt that, it'd probably be overwhelming to your system. It'd be like a straight shoot to the moon. Like you'd be going from a little pea-sized capacity to like the entire world. And it's just too much all at once. So you do have to take your steps towards it. And we'll talk about different things that you can do after this to start taking steps away from chaos and into like peace and flow, and things I work on with my one-on-one clients. But it can be so easy. You can live a life where you're guided. The weight of the world does not have to be in your hands anymore. You can trust God to guide you. We have that inner voice. We know it. We've heard it before. We get it. And like, it's so prominent. And when you learn to trust that inner voice, it guides you everywhere. It knows everything. It knows exactly what you want and how to get to it. You just surrender. Another one. Love, surrender. And like I was saying, if you weren't able to trust your caregivers, it's going to be tough to start letting go of that control. But you're not a kid anymore. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be able to get back up. You're going to be able to take the steps. It might not be an easy road there, but it's worth the journey. Life can be really easy imagine life where you meditate in the mornings, you're at peace, you can hear God's voice, you're guided, you really don't have to think about much. You just let him guide you through every single day. Okay, what do I do next? What do I do next? What do I do next? And you just kind of let that, and you take the action. You feel the stirring in your heart, and you take the action, and you have that guidance. And it's peaceful. It's full of love. And you feel loved because you're taking that guidance and you're like, God, you love me so much, right? You love me so much that you're just guiding me. It's so peaceful and it just flows. And that's really the state you're trying to get to, okay? And in order to do that, yes, you'll have to release control. You'll have to release the desire to suffer and risk that it might be boring. And a lot of people say that when they're going for like a healthy, loving relationship, or they're starting to break the inconsistency pattern. And like I went through that too. I remember I was working with a coach at the time, and I was like, "It's boring here." But I will tell you, in the journey to there, it gets boring, but then it gets really great, because why? You start expanding your capacity and creating this new reality, and you start to actually enjoy it. You start to allow yourself to feel those emotions, and you're like, oh wait, I actually kind of like this. And it's not going to be these high hits of dopamine anymore. You probably won't feel the desire to scroll on social media a bunch anymore, or even drink on the weekends. Like I don't drink anymore. I barely scroll. I post a bunch, but I barely scroll. And you just start defining your worth in something more important, which is God. And you start trusting in God, and you start taking on that desire to ask him before doing anything in your life. And all that frustration fades away. That shame and that guilt, you can let that go. That stress, that anxiety, the fear, the constriction, because this is such a constricting place to be, whereas like this is like an open hand. And what happens in those moments, like things just flow to you. You've been there before. I'm sure that you've experienced pieces of it. Okay? And so here's what happens. Let's get to it. Let's talk about balance. Here you are. I like 4 areas of life: health, wealth, relationships, do happiness / fulfillment. Okay. And then in the center here is God. You and God are teammates in this life, and God is the center of your life. And here's what happens. Here's what happens is we can get really obsessive and attached with certain areas of our life, which throws us off in our addiction to chaos and in attachment. Attachment's a big one. And what happens is when we put all of the efforts towards wealth, these other areas, what happens? They start to go down. They start to sink. All of a sudden, we're obsessing over our wealth, and we stop going to the gym as much, or we stop doing our hobbies, and we stop nurturing our relationships, whether that be family, friends, or your partner. And so the other areas, they lack. What happens when you get super obsessed with your health and you put all of your energy towards your health? I've done it. I used to count my macros like a nut. I used to go to the gym constantly, and I just obsessed with it. And all I thought about was like what I was going to eat, how much I was going to eat, the macros involved in it, and all of that. I wasn't really thinking about my career at the time. I didn't have any other hobbies besides going to the gym, and my relationships were really not really existent. What happens when you attach to your relationship and you use that to fill a void? What happens is all the other areas, they start to fall to the wayside. I remember that too. When I was so hyper focused on my relationship, thinking it filled all my voids, my health started to take a hit, my wealth. I only did what he wanted to do, really. I didn't have any hobbies or thoughts for myself. And then what happens when all you do is have fun? Life is fun. I just do hobbies all the time. You don't have any money. And then your health maybe falls to the wayside, or maybe you even do balance in health a little bit there. And then your relationships tend to struggle because there's not like that structure around it and all of that stuff. So you start to see when you fall off balance, or when you put too much effort into one area, rather than balancing your attention and energy, and you keep God at the center of your life, then your life is balanced and you're very happy. Because you don't need to hyper attach to any area. And there may be seasons in your life where some need more attention, right? Like your wealth and your career at some points may need a little more attention, right? Or your health, because you're going through something health-wise, or you're prepping for a marathon or something, right? So you get what I'm saying. Or maybe you're on a sabbatical, so your happiness and your fulfillment is a focus right now. You're in a new relationship, right? So you get it. But for the most part, we want to keep these things in balance. And when we keep these things in balance and we keep God at the center, then we are happy. We find ourselves to be able to ebb and flow in life. But the problem is when we attach to something, you can't be attached to God and money. It even says it in the Bible. You can't be attached. You can't put your partner first before God. We're not designed that way. And I don't know if you've experienced it, but it's all adds up. What you read in the Bible, what you experience, and every time you put something before God, it flops and it doesn't work out. And God's like, I told you, put me first. How many times do you want to do this? And I only know because I've been there. I've tried everything. The only thing that works is keeping God at the center of your life. We are humanly, spiritually designed that way. So when we put God first, and then we add in all of the blessings and all of the great things in our life, and we balance them, and we have structure around them, and we have maturity around them, then we're able to access this place of balance. What gives you balance? What brings balance? Brings flow, ease, fulfillment. I don't think I spelled that right, but and that's where you want to head to. That's where you want to go. And if you need more support in breaking out of this pattern, definitely reach out to me for one-on-one. I have 2 spots available as of right now, as of the date of this video. And we work deeply in this because it's attachments and constantly craving and latching onto those attachments and sending your life into absolute haywire. All because you let your past dictate your present life, rather than giving it all up to God and starting a new life. You can start a completely new life and be led by the Holy Spirit, by that inner guidance every single day. If you just breathe a few times a day and say, I'm here with you, God, guide me. I'm here. But you cannot hear that voice when there's constant chaos going on in your life, when there is constant noise, because listening to that inner guidance requires silence. So last thing we're going to talk about are the practices that you can start to, and what I also assign to my clients. We do weekly homework and goals, and that's what really makes the changes. So I'm going to give you some here and now, some things that you can do to start changing your addictions and start releasing those addictions, so that you can start to hear that voice and start entering some flow slowly. You don't have to go all the way. You don't want to take the pendulum swing. I've done that. You just keep going back and forth. But in the middle, where you're just kind of bouncing in the middle, versus going all the way to the chaos and going all the way to the spiritual peace. And all you want to do is lay on the beach. And I've said this in videos before. I remember, I need my water. It was crazy because when I left New York City, I was a workaholic, an absolute workaholic. And then I went on a 6-month sabbatical. One of the places I went was Hawaii. And I saw the opposite side of the spectrum, which were like, I don't know if you'd call them hippies or whatever they might have been. And they were just sitting on the beach naked with their banjo, and I don't think they had jobs. And they were just hanging out every day. And so it's like, that's the pendulum swing. And you just don't want to go too far left or too far right. You want to stay right in the middle. So some things that you need to do. And I will tell you right now, my clients don't always love this. But you can write a list of your regrets. Ask for forgiveness. Because if you've been living in a state of chaos and stress and all this craziness, odds are you probably have made some not so good decisions. To-dos. Odds are you may have some things that you're not very proud of. I know I did when I took this journey. I know I did. So you could set a timer on your phone. Maybe 3 times a day to breathe and connect with God. Okay, another good one. If you have your morning coffee or you drink tea, I also don't drink caffeine anymore. That was part of my also releasing the addiction to chaos. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I don't know if I ever will drink alcohol again, but as of right now, I don't like it. I never really liked drinking alcohol anyway. But start your morning when you're drinking your hot drink. I want you to feel it move all the way through your body. Like, I want you to be intentional with like sitting. This is the practice of just starting to like notice and get back in touch with your body, because when you're getting back in touch with that inner guidance, It's you have to connect your mind, your body, and your spirit. We are made of all three: mind, body, spirit. We have to reconnect all of them. So start morning with noticing practices. I like going to feel the wind on my face. I like going for walks. I like, silent. Well, I wouldn't call it silent. So this is for my real beginners. Meditation walks. So you listen to meditation music, no words. We do not want to alter your emotions in any way. We want you to get in touch with your own emotions. So you can listen to vibrations or you can listen to just like the tunes or whatever, but this is for my real beginners who have a really hard time slowing down. Go for a walk, but in your earbuds, put on the meditation music. No affirmations, no audiobooks. We don't want any of that. We want nothing that's going to make you feel any emotions because we're trying to get you in touch with your own emotions. So, starting with noticing practices, meditation walks, no words, and prayer. Prayer is going to be the last one. Like, start to have little conversations with God because that's going to start getting you in touch with that inner voice too. Just start having little conversations and chatting with him. And maybe your 3 times a day, like phone alarm to like breathe, maybe you have a little conversation with him. You just breathe and you say, okay, like, this is how I'm feeling right now, God. And that's going to be one more. Write down how you're feeling. Feelings. So, and talk about them with God because you don't really know how you feel right now. There's so much chaos and so much craziness going on inside of you that in order to get centered and grounded again, you're going to want to write down your feelings and start getting connected with your emotions again. Because, like I said, emotions are the language of the subconscious. It's ultimately the only thing we are seeking. That is the language of God. It is the most important thing in our life. And it is the most important mode of communication that we have. So that's what I have for you. And if you do them, or tell me which ones you're going to do in the comments. And if you do them, let me know how they go for you because I'd love to know about it. Let the comments be your little accountability buddy. And I hope this was helpful. Again, if you need further support, I've got group coaching, I've got one-on-one, and I've also got a membership program that's based around money and money expansion. And we talk about all of this stuff, healing. There's a module on addiction to chaos in there. There's lots of practices in there for you. So check it out in the description below. It'd be helpful to check out. And that's all I have for you today.